there are hemispheric differences. Commonly in pop psychology, the idea is that the left hemisphere does some things that are exclusively to the left hemisphere, and the right hemisphere is extremely different. Now, in fact, both hemispheres do most things, but there is a slight preference for certain activities to be done in certain hemispheres. The biggest difference is language. The main language centre is in your left hemisphere if you are right-handed. If you are left-handed, you've probably got about 50-50. Who's left-handed here? None of you. James, you left or right? Right.
No, both my sisters were, I think they was left-handed, but given age and time they were born, they were pretty much taught right-handed stuff.
Okay.
Like issues with pairs of scissors growing up.
I'm left-handed. I'm very lefted. The only thing I do is play golf right-handed or cricket right-handed. But all the rest I kick with left foot and right with left hand. Everything is lefted. So it's very interesting. 1 in 10 is left-handed in the population. But it's a right-handed world. So, in my brain, I will have 50-50 language. But in your brains, because you're all right-handed, you will have 90% of your language in your left hemisphere. So you have a little bit of language ability over here, but most of it is processed over here on the left side. So the production of speech is up in the front, and the comprehension of speech is back here. What are the two centres? Do you remember the names for the two centres? The two language centres, comprehension and production of speech? Language comprehension. Wernicke's area? Wernicke's? Do you remember Wernicke's area? Okay. Some of the other differences here are rather interesting. In your visual field, what you have here, each eye, if you think about the left eye for a moment, what we've got with the left eye is we've got left and right visual field in the left eye. So we've got half and half. Okay? Half of it goes across to the other hemisphere, and half of it stays in this hemisphere. Over on the right eye, half of it goes to the other hemisphere, and half of it stays here. Does that make sense? Yeah? In each of your eyes, you have a left and right visual field. So half of your vision from your right eye stays in your right hemisphere, and half of it goes to your left hemisphere. In your left eye, the same takes place. Half stays on that side, and half of the information goes over to the right-hand side. So, if somebody has a stroke and they lose the vision in their, say they lose their left visual field, and if they're lying in bed, well, if they're lying in bed and they've got no left visual field, they will only see the top half of you. They won't see the bottom half.
Oh, I thought it would mean that they would still have some side left, like it was like a survival. Do you know what I mean?
Well, it is, but if it is, exactly right. Biologically, you would think, and behaviourally, that would enable you to still have half of your vision there. But in fact, what that means is that if they've got a problem in one half of their brain, then it's likely to affect their visual field. And if they've knocked out, say, the left visual field or the right visual field, they need to, and you come and you're operating here with them, they're lying in bed, but they can't actually see you. They might see the bottom half even, but not the top. Then they're not going to know what you're doing. And so often staff will say, well, he just lashed out for no reason, he could see me. But in fact, he might not have been able to see what you were doing. that make sense? What else have we got here? Calculation skills in the left hemisphere, mathematical skills. The right hemisphere is much more, in pop psychology, it's associated with your creative side. Your ability to dance, to paint, to sing, to do all these creative things. But the left-hand side is much more about calculation, processing, writing skills, whereas this is the creative side of your brain, supposedly.
So we had this lady who had a stroke, and she's lived in Australia for 50 years. She doesn't speak English anymore. She can only speak Dutch. She lost completely. She's no dementia, nothing, but she doesn't speak English anymore. She can't understand it and she can't speak it anymore.
So she's just not practiced it over her lifetime?
Yeah, because she's lived here after the stroke that completely disappeared.
Yeah. Okay. It's very interesting, the effects of stroke on language, because often if somebody can't speak because of a stroke, you can get around that by singing. So I was with a lady, interestingly, she was unable to say anything other than the word no.
Oh, we have another lady that, yeah. She can only say the same.
It's interesting.
The same, the
Yeah.
same, the
Over
same.
and
So she'll
over
talk to you the same, the same, the same, the same. In her mind, I guess
That's what she was
maybe
saying.
we're just watching where she's pointing at, like, oh, yeah, sure, you can get it up to the same.
So to her mind, she is saying something comprehensible, but in fact it's coming out the same, those words. So her feedback is not perceiving it the way it actually is.
So she doesn't hear that she says the same, the same.
No, she hears that the words are the same, or the words are what she intends.
So that means she thought like we doesn't understand her. Yeah?
What's that?
That means she may feel like we doesn't understand her.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is
Exactly.
get frustrated.
So she's not being misunderstood. It's very frustrating. So if you sing to her and you get her to sing back, it would be very interesting to see what she can sing to you. This lady who could only say no could sing Happy Birthday. And then I sang something else using the tune of Happy Birthday, and she was able to sing that. She was able to sing a response to it, because she's accessing another part of her brain, not the spoken word.
The creative one.
Yeah, it's accessing that side maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what happens.
Once they can't speak, that means they can't speak. That's what I thought. Like.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? In some situations that may be the case, but I would suggest that it might be useful to explore that with the person. So.
Similarly, there was a young guy who was in a coma, and he came out of it speaking a different language.
Oh yes.
He still spoke English, he didn't forget his English language, but he came out of it speaking this other Asian language that he'd never had. He'd never had around him.
Was it meaningful or not? It was. That's quite strange.
Yeah, since gone to that country and he's doing his university. It's very important.
It's bizarre, wasn't it? That was I remember it was in the papers.
Yeah, and he's making good living out of doing something.
Sometimes good luck, bad luck, who knows?
Taking the positives out of the negatives.
Yeah. Okay, so hemispheric differences. This next one is a slide that, oops, we just go to some of these. We can start to name some of the areas of the brain. So here I'd like you to think about what areas are visible. So, here, which direction is the brain facing? Which direction are the person's eyes? Here, towards me?
Yeah, towards his.
Okay. Good, so we've got basic orientation. What's this area here? Frontal lobe. And this area? Temporal lobe. Good. This area down the bottom? Cerebellum. In the green at the back? Occipital. And here? Parietal. Good. Okay. Now these two areas might not be so obvious, so don't worry if you don't remember them. This area at the front? It's called the something strip. Okay? Motor strip. Motor. M-O-T-O-R. Pink one. And the blue one is the sensory strip. The areas of the frontal lobe that are responsible for taking in information. And Nikki, you gave the example before of pulling your hand away from the hot plate. That's sensory information. So that information would go to the sensory strip. The heat information comes up into the brain, and then the motor strip generates the muscular response of pulling the hand away. So sensory strip and the motor strip go together. Excuse me. Can anyone tell me what this is called? There's a little name for this diagram. You notice there it's out of all proportions.
Yeah. And it reflects all the parts of your body that it controls, maybe? Swallowing in the back. Taste. Expressions. Yeah.
This is often what is referred to as a homunculus. Homunculus. And it's simply a drawing that indicates the amount of brain tissue associated with each of those bodily areas.
What's it? The drawing that indicates
The amount of
brain tissue associated with each of those bodily areas. So you will notice that there is a large amount of brain tissue associated with hand, fingers and thumb movement. There's a lot of brain tissue helping us to do all of that fine motor control and sensitivity that we have in our fingers, our thumb. Does that make sense? So we've got a lot of brain tissue dedicated to that area of our body. The next area that is quite large is our face, because there is so much nerve activity associated with controlling our face muscles, and particularly our lips. There's a lot of nerve activity and brain activity associated with sensory information and motor information around our mouth and our tongue. So that area is particularly large. In proportion, the body itself doesn't receive a whole lot. The hip, the trunk, foot. And that's the geography of where each of these body parts is stimulated. So if we were to put a little electrode into that area of your body would move. For instance, my foot would move if they put a little electrode in that area of the brain. Here, my face would move. my tongue, my larynx. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So it can be quite specific about which area is likely to be stimulated.